Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Atlantic CIL podcast. I'm your host, Donald Campbell, of course, the executive director of the Atlantic CIL. I'm here with Megan Grannan, who was referred to me by somebody in the community as a great person I could talk to for the podcast, somebody who lives independently with a disability, and that's what we're all about here at the Atlantic CIL podcast. So hi, Megan, how are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm good.
Hi, Megan. So I'm going to start with an intro question. Just tell us a little bit about you and the disability you live with.
Okay. I have a very rare form of dwarfism called Metatropic Dysplasia, and it affects about 100 people in the world. I have a twin sister, and I'm a teacher, and I love everything about that job. Just to be able to teach the kids about different things and show them that there's different people in the world besides themselves. And I'm now saving up to move out of my parents' house.
Oh, that's awesome. And, living out is expensive. So a lot of people, I think, are saving up and making sure they have enough funds to live out by themselves because it's not cheap. I know I live with two other people just to make ends meet. It is not.
Yeah, it is expensive.
It is not. People have really got to think about when they're ready to move out. If they're fortunate enough to have somebody like parents to live with, really having a plan in place and saving for a while before you make that jump. So tell us, you talked about your dwarfism. Is it genetic? What causes dwarfism? Just so people understand.
So my dwarfism, actually, they thought that my parents carried the gene, and just within, I would say, the past 10 or so years, they figured out there's a genetic test for it. It is genetic. It was like a lightning bolt, like it just happened one time. My parents decided not to have more kids after my sister and I, just because they were told that they could have another child like me. And they were actually fortunate enough to have one that didn't have like the severe end of it, because it could be severe or fatal if it's that end of it. So I actually got tested and I carry the gene, so it will be genetic for me, but it wasn't for them. And most dwarfisms are like a lightning bolt. It just happens once.
Just happens once. So does your sister live with dwarfism as well, or
she does not? She's not. We're not identical. I don't think my parents could handle two of us. Me.
Yes, yeah, yes. That would have been. It would have been too much for them.
Yeah.
So, what was it like growing up with dwarfism, and what were some of the challenges and some of the things that went along with it?
So obviously, when you're young, you don't realize what's going on, that you're smaller than everybody else. And my parents raised me just like my sister. They put me in dance lessons. They put me in ice skating lessons, horseback riding. I was raised to do everything like everybody else. I don't think it hit me till middle school. It didn't hit me till middle school that I was different, because our community, I went through Waterford Public Schools, and our community was like very sheltered, like everything was good, But when I went to middle school, that's when it hit me. And one of the high schoolers told everybody on the bus I had AIDS and nobody should sit near me. That's when I think it really hit me. But I really didn't have many challenges. I had friends, but I didn't have like the friends I have today, where I made in college and living there and stuff like that. Not to say I don't talk to many people from high school. I just really don't.
That's all right. I feel you. I have some relationships from high school, but it's a bubble, and when you get out of it, you realize that the world is kind of bigger than that bubble you were in. And, yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I have cerebral palsy, so I always was aware of my disability, but it gets highlighted more kind of in that middle school and high school level where people really start unfortunately noticing and sometimes making a big deal out of differences because everybody's insecure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anything that can take the focus off of them sometimes is
Oh yeah.
a good strategy. So that story you told, I think some people a lot of people with disabilities, different type of disabilities, have a variation of that where it wasn't a big, you didn't even really focus on it, and then somebody kind of pointed it out in a real ignorant and foolish way, and then it was like, oh, now I got to deal with it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So how was college like? Where did you go to college, and how did you end up kind of in the career field?
So I was not the best student at all, and it's kind of ironic that I'm a teacher because I love school, but I was not good, and it was due to the fact that I was in and out of school when I was younger for surgeries. So that brought me to I was in pull-out classes, and so I worked so hard to get out of that by high school, but there was just so much time lost, so the SATs didn't go well, obviously.
Me either.
Yeah, I know. So it's like, oh well. So I kind of just said whatever, and it's kind of funny because my sister was waiting around for envelopes, and I'm like, whatever. So kind of I had the kind of whatever feel going out of high school, which is probably not the best thing. And I got told you're either getting a job or going to county college because you're not sitting around the house.
Was that your parents?
Yeah, that was my mom. So I was like, okay. So I was like, but sitting around the house sounds really good right now.
I know, but
Yeah.
you had good parents. You had good parents.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. So I was like, she's not going to do anything. And lo and behold, she took me to county college and dropped me off and said, you're taking the transfer or the entrance exam. And I did. And of course, I was in remedial courses, but honestly, that was the best thing for me to go to county college just because I was just catching up on academic stuff, and it really truly saved me because now I was my own person. I didn't have an aide anymore. It was all up to me. I took my own notes, and that's what I needed, honestly, to be me, to come out and be me. So I was at Camden County for 3 years, and I thought I was going to be in computer programming, and that was a lie because the lady that set up the class said, "That's a fun class, take it." I kid you not, I was at the tutor every Saturday from opening till when he was done. So it was like 8 to 12, 4 hours to get these programming things done. By the end, he was like, here, just take the sheet and copy the answers. That's how bad I was. So that was not the career field for me. So I did go into teaching, and I was so happy I did that. So I did course hours there, and then I graduated in 3 years, like I said, with my associates in education. And then I transferred to Stockton University for 3 more years. And honestly, I could have not asked for a better experience. I met my lifelong friends now there, and I lived on campus there, and they redid the whole area apartment for me, and it was just such an amazing experience. And if I could go back, I would do it again 1,000 times over.
That's awesome. When did you graduate from Stockton?
In 2017 of December.
Oh, awesome. That's great. That's where I graduated from as well in 2013, and Stockton is great.
We probably passed each other.
Yeah, we probably did pass each other. We should have started some like disability alliance thing, like the events. But I think what you said, that there's so many important things I want to talk to you about, because I was there after high school too. Like I knew I wanted to go to school, but my SATs weren't that great. So, you're just trying to figure that out. And that can be very discouraging, especially if you're out there listening to this with a disability. But the great thing about like community college is that you really get a fresh start. And you were talking about that, Megan, kind of with you, like you needed kind of a fresh start in a new environment. And it let you it let you flourish and find your own identity.
Yes.
The other thing, yes, talk about that.
So finding my own identity was kind of interesting because like so many people find it in high school and they do all this. And in high school, I could, like I said, I could care less. I kind of ran the school, to be honest. I did what I wanted. And that's kind of the identity I had in elementary school. So getting out on my own, I always knew I wanted to drive as well, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I, piece by piece, meeting friends, like I helped them along with math. And then I realized, maybe I am a teacher because I'm tutoring people, and making new friends and just, nobody was around me. So it was me. So even at Stockton, it was like, as my friends probably call it, like they were picking piece by piece to see what was underneath. And it's not that I have barriers put up because people have hurt me in the past. So I have a lot of barriers, and if I don't know you, I'm not showing you the real me. But they got to see the real me, and that's like fun, exciting, like that's crazy. But I just am me, and nobody really got to see that in high school or anywhere else because I couldn't be me, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I just wanted to highlight that because, it's okay not to have everything figured out after high school. I mean, it's high school when it feels like the most important moments of your life, but there's so much life to live after high school. So it doesn't define just because you had a bad experience there or not the greatest experiences there doesn't mean that there's still a lot more experiences to have. So you should embrace them. The other thing that I thought was really important and really encouraging that what you said, I think your parents deserve a lot of credit, and I think people with disabilities and their parents should also listen to this. Like your parents communicated high expectations to you, like, no, you're not going to just sit at home.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's not like this is the next phase of your life is either working or going to school.
Yeah.
That, because you were in a phase of your life where you're like, I don't know, staying home sounds okay.
Yeah.
But that was really good of your mom, especially to give you that push and be like,
yeah.
no, you have life to live.
Yeah. I give her a lot of credit because she kicked me out of the house. Not really, but in a sense that I tell her today, if she would have let me sit in the house, I still wouldn't be doing anything. I wouldn't be teaching. I wouldn't be doing anything.
Right, because you were just, when you're young, you're like, I don't know, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, sounds excellent.
I don't have to deal with people. I'm okay with this. So, and another thing you said that I think people with disabilities need to take away from this too is when you have a disability in college, it's a little different because it's up to you to figure things out. Like you have to get your accommodations, where in high school and middle school, when you're younger, the school finds you with a disability. Right. And they give you your accommodation. So, but when you're in college, there are accommodations you can get. You can get a note taker, you can get extra time on tests and assignments, and there's a lot of things that you can talk to your disability office about, but they don't come find you. So you have to do it yourself. I always tell people with disabilities who are going to college who are like, what do I do? I'm like, first day, find your disability accommodations office. And if you want accommodations, ask them.
Yes. That's a good point you make, because I meant to say that with accommodations, they don't find you. You have to go identify yourself as disabled, and that is really key. I know a lot of people don't do that, and they're like, why is the professor not helping? And I always say, did you ask for accommodations? A lot of people don't know that.
And a lot of people are like, what? Where do I go? That's the thing. And I'm like, yes, that's the thing. but it's not up to the professor to find you your
Oh no.
accommodation. It's, and I always tell people to do it as soon as possible because, as you know, Megan, college can go a lot quicker than high school, where if you get behind, it's harder to catch up. Not impossible, but it's hard to catch up. So you want to reduce that stress on you and get your accommodations as soon as possible. So, and sometimes you got to do some work on your own because sometimes your disability accommodations office is named some weird name. So, like
Oh yeah.
Stockton's name is the Learning Access Program, and sometimes they're a little hidden. So you got to do some Googling and some asking around sometimes. But don't, I think that the big message when people ask, I think people like you and I, like, how do people with disabilities kind of thrive in the community? And the big thing you got to do is you got to like take charge of your own life. You can't wait for somebody else to advocate for you. You have to be in the driver's seat.
Oh yes. I always say that as well. You have to advocate for yourself, and I truly believe college really made me the advocate I am for today for myself.
Yeah, that's great. So you lived on campus the whole time?
I lived on campus for 2 years because I did student teaching and it was closer to my house than living on campus. It didn't make sense.
Right.
But yes, I did live on campus for 2 years. I met my best friend in a education class, and it's kind of funny because I realized that she was in my science class and I needed help with the elevator buttons, and her friend at the time wouldn't let me speak. So I was like, I'm not going to talk to her or whatever. And my mom was like, you talk to everybody. What's the problem? I'm like, her friend can't, her friend won't let me speak. And she's like, say, excuse me. I'm like, and if anybody knows me, like, if you know me, you know I'm loud, crazy, and will do whatever. But this, for some reason, intimidated me. So I finally got the courage to ask her, and she's like, yeah, of course. So that led on to lunches and stuff like that. And she asked me if I would be their fourth roommate, and I said yes. So, because one day we were talking about living on campus, and I said, yeah, I think I'm going to live on campus and have a single. And she's like, why would you do that when we need a fourth roommate? I met her friends before, so it worked, and we all became lifelong friends. So it was a good thing.
That's awesome, and it shows that, again, your mom was right, that speaking up could lead to because that's what opened the door, and and also putting yourself out there too. And I know that's hard for a lot of people, not only with or without disabilities. Like, you could have been like, no, I'll keep my single, but you were like, no, like, let's have the college experience a little bit and have some fun and connect with some new people, and you still have those friendships to this day. So tell me about how you got your job as a teacher and where you work now.
So I'll keep this in a condensed version of the job. Out of college, they tell you in the teaching profession, I'm sure, and as every profession, you're gonna get a job right out of the bat. Well, I'm sure as you know, people with disabilities do not get that experience.
Right.
People look at, like, they love your resume, and then you go in and they're like, ooh,
this is different. This is different. Oh,
this is different than, no. So I had been a long-term sub for a while, and for the past 4 years. So I've worked in Mount Holly for 3.5 years, and I wasn't getting a job. So then I went to Gloucester City, which that was the most testing of my career ever. They were taking pictures of me, putting them on social media, taking videos. So I finally students were doing that. So I finally just said, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I came home in June and I said, I'm not going back. And my mom was totally supportive of it because she saw what was happening, and I just said, okay, I'm done. So I did apply. I've applied over 70 jobs, and I landed the last one through a connection I had at Gloucester City, which is super nice. And I work in Brookline, and I'm the resource teacher to fifth, sixth, and seventh graders, which is crazy that I'm teaching middle school now. It's a like full circle because I hated middle school, but
Right, that was the
yeah,
school where the student said you had
yep,
AIDS, but it's not horrible. It's weird how things and it's also, a really good lesson for people and people with disabilities, but people in general. Like I always tell people, like nobody's gonna knock on your door and offer you a job. You have to like put yourself in situations and apply for places and
yeah,
volunteer and like put yourself in situations sometimes that are uncomfortable and that you're like, why am I doing this? Where is this going? Because you were talking about how your time in Gloucester City was really difficult, but you also said that that connection is what got you this job. So
yeah,
it was like that had a reason to it, even though it was like, I gotta get out, this is a toxic environment. I have to
yeah.
get out of here.
Yeah, it was definitely that. That's why I stuck it out. And like you said, you always tell people you don't know where the connections are. You really don't.
You
Um,
don't.
yeah. And if you
And
work hard and they see it, they'll give you a good recommendation.
right, right. And it's just, a, a lot of getting jobs is based on knowing people and because it's a competitive environment. And so if you can get somebody to put in a good word for you, that helps. And you don't know where. That's why I also treat everyone with respect and be nice to people because you never know
Yeah.
what their position is going to be one day. You want them to have a good memory of you. So I also want to talk about, do you have any tips for like when you have a disability, how to interview and how you dealt with, because like you said, it's like people see your resume and love it, but then sometimes they meet you and they see that you have a disability and you always have in the back of your mind, like, did that affect my ability to get this job?
Yes. So my advice would be, this is probably ridiculous just because of I know education's a tough world, but I would say, I learned to say, well, don't look at me, look at what I can do.
Right.
Because they started to look at you like right off the bat. And I would be in interviews for 5 minutes and I knew I didn't get the job. Well, I would say, just answer the question fully. And then at the end, I used to say, yes, I have a disability, but please look at what I can do. Look at the chance. Look what I've done. But sometimes it doesn't go that way. I would just say, really, just keep going. Don't stop. Because if you stop at, say, 10, then you're done. Like, you don't know what else is out there. Keep going.
Right. That's a great point, Megan. And it's so, like I said, it's frustrating because it's Megan, like you said, but it's like, it's not like anyone's going to say, we didn't give you this job because you have a disability, because that's
Yeah.
illegal. So, it's, you never know. And sometimes it's not the reason, who knows? But like, so you can't obsess about, even though it's hard, the rejection and the negative of it. You just gotta keep pushing away. And the thing I always tell people is if somebody didn't give you a job because of your disability, you don't want to work there anyway, because it's not
Yeah,
a good
no.
environment for you anyway. So it kind of weeds itself out. But like you said, you gotta keep pushing yourself because there are teachers with disabilities. Like I went to law school, there are lawyers with disabilities.
Yeah.
There, you're not breaking ground, you're pushing, you're making progress, but don't give up. Don't give up because, when you do get a job, then it's also helping other people with disabilities. Because then, if there is anyone with their stereotypes, they're saying, "Hey, people with disabilities can work," and you're also bringing something new to the environment. Like I'm sure a lot of students have learned about disability from having you as a teacher, which is a great. experience, I bet,
Yes,
for a lot of them.
they truly have. I had my one student, and he was like, Miss G. I said, yes. And I'm waiting for it. I'm like, ugh, here it comes. And he was like, I've never had a teacher that's smaller than me. I'm like, well, I've never had, I said, I never, there's so many things that you never had before. And I'm glad you're being honest with me. And then he just moved on. And I was like, well, there we go.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Like you thought it was going to be like a whole thing, but he just
yeah,
wanted to acknowledge it.
yeah.
Like,
It was quick. I was like, all right, good.
I thought we were going to have to do the entire disability, conversation.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a good story. Do you have any accommodations, if you're comfortable disclosing? Do you have anything at work? Like, what would you give? What advice would you give for people with disabilities when they get the job navigating that environment?
I have to tell you that my employer has been amazing. When I applied, I was like, oh, I'm not going to get it. And then I was like, because nobody's going to want to make accommodations. Like, I've gone through schools and they don't make accommodations. They just let you do whatever. Like, you know what I mean? They just say, okay. Wasn't part of their staff before. But when I got this job, my boss kept saying, whatever you need, we'll do. Whatever you need, we'll do. And I kept saying, okay, all right. And then, so I had a couple friends and my parents were helping me with my classroom. And my mom was like, did you tell him what you needed yet? I'm going, no, because I don't want to be pushy. And then I don't want to upset him, and I don't want to upset anybody because, as being disabled, that all goes through your mind. Like, you don't want to push it because then you don't want them to snap back and say no.
Right. That's the societal thing of like, I don't want to be a burden, which is so wrong, but it's like that thing you're conditioned to by society sometimes.
Yeah. So they actually did a lot. One thing is I couldn't get into the school building myself. So they put a button so I can click it and the door opens. That was huge. Like, no school district has ever done that for me, ever. So it was amazing. Then I was on the 3rd floor, but with safety, with fires and stuff like that, I switched classrooms and moved on the 1st floor. So that was good and bad because it's great because now I can get out, but bad because I'm not with the middle school crowd, so I go upstairs. But it's amazing that happened. Just those 2 accommodations right there were amazing.
And when you asked, they were open to it, and
yes.
Yeah, so and that's important too. It's like we, as people with disabilities, again, we look at it sometimes as we don't want to be a bother, but there are laws. Like, we do have the right to work.
Yeah.
So as long as the accommodation is reasonable, and by just so people understand, when we say reasonable accommodation, we mean it has to be objectively reasonable and it can't be an undue burden onto wherever you're working. So like Megan couldn't ask for the school to, create a brand new school just for her, because that would have been a undue burden for the school district and the school district, but and the taxpayers. But like moving classrooms, that's really not an undue burden, because there are plenty of classrooms in the school and they could switch it around.
Yes.
And adding a button onto the door, not only does that benefit Megan, but I guarantee you that probably benefits other people too, or will in the future. And that's the beauty of disability accommodations. Like, people think it's like an expense, but more often than not, we find out that, everybody loves curve cuts and door openers and stuff like that. So, and Zoom and stuff that help people with disabilities, they also make everybody's life easier. So it's not an either or proposition. So, but that's a great story how, you were like, oh, I don't want to ask, but actually it worked out, and it can work out too. It doesn't always go wrong.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like you said, it can work out. But you're like, I don't know. Sometimes you're like, I don't want to ask because then I don't want them to get mad at me.
Right. Or I don't want to be an issue, or I
Yes,
don't, it's all that stuff again. It's like, again, it's that negative framing that I think we really need to get away from, but that society still pushes. But like, because we're not being an issue for wanting, you're not being an issue for wanting to escape the building if it goes on fire.
right.
Like that's not being an issue. That's you wanting to like live and work. So it's just important for people to understand. And I always have to remind myself, and I think people with disabilities need to remind themselves of that. So how long have you been teaching at your current school?
I just started in September, so it's kind of new, but I did start in September and it's been amazing.
All right. So, and did you always teach middle school? You started with the younger
No,
babies.
I started with kindergarten. I kind of got away from kindergarten due to the fact that it was just becoming too much. And when I went to Gloucester City, I taught middle school, and I was like, oh man, I've been missing this because now I'm actually teaching. So
Right. Whereas kindergarten, it's probably more like planning and like just keeping everybody on track.
oh yeah, and singing and dancing and oh my gosh, I'm tired. What are we doing next?
Right.
Yes.
Right. You're like, what's your favorite subject to teach?
This is shocking too, but I hated math as a student, but I love teaching it.
Oh, I hate math. You could never, you couldn't make me love math, Megan. Nobody can, but
Yeah,
I'm glad somebody's teaching it because it really is important. But
it is.
I hated it and still hate it to this day. In fact, I don't even like numbers. I have anxiety when I see numbers.
I get it. I don't like it either, but I love teaching it.
Yeah, because I bet you it's a real reward because it is very difficult for people, and when you can, for some people, and when you can get them to understand it, it's like, got it. That's probably a great feeling.
Yes.
That's fun. So, this has been a great discussion. You said something about driving, and I know I don't drive. So, what have been kind of your challenges in that area? And are you drive? And kind of tell me your journey with that.
So I do drive. That was about a 12-year process. I got my, at 16, you go, you take your test, your driver's test in high school. So I took that. Let's just say I failed the first 2 times, and I took it a third, and I passed. But everybody's like, "Can she drive? Will she drive?" So I went for an evaluation up in North Jersey at Kessler, and they were like, "Yes, she can drive." So secretly, my dad wanted them to say no, but that didn't happen. So then I what did I did lessons and for a couple years, and I was just about to go take my driver's test, and the guy was like, "Nah, I want you to try a different system." I'm like, "What?" So then the state stopped paying for it, and then I found the system that I need, which is a joystick system, but it was out in PA. So the state paid for 2 weeks for me to go to PA and do an intensive driving course. And then I came back and took my driver's test here that following November, which was the driving lessons were in the summer. So I definitely had a challenge doing all that. But I'm sure, as you know, DVR is not the most fast working program.
Yes.
Yeah. As much as they helped me, I was aggravated half the time.
Yes, and that is DVR is the Division of Vocational Rehab, and they exist to essentially help people with disabilities find jobs. They're under the Department of Labor, so they do a lot of driving lessons, or they will pay for your driving lessons. Sometimes if you every service they do has to be connected to sorry for coughing, to getting a job, getting employment. So I got driver's lessons through there, and Megan was talking about her experience. And there are great people who work there, but it is a bureaucracy, and you have to constantly push for what you need.
Yeah.
So Megan is correct that you just gotta keep pushing. I did driver's lessons. They paid for some of mine during there too. I ultimately decided after a couple attempts and a couple of different teachers that I wasn't comfortable driving, and now I get around through Lyft and through my other programs and through people driving me. But people with disabilities do drive, and Megan's a great testament that you do have to keep pushing for it. And how long have you been driving, Megan?
So 2 years. 2 years I've been driving. And I absolutely love it. That really gave me that boost of freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the different systems. So what do you use? Is it hand controls? Is it?
Yes. I use all hand controls, and it's a joystick, like a gaming system. And it's kind of funny because the kids I'll be driving away from school, and the kids will be not following me, but on the sidewalk. And the next day I'll hear, "Did you see Miss G in her car? Because that thing drives itself." Now I kind of let that go because I'm not going to argue with them, but
Right.
they think it's the coolest thing ever. So
Right.
I actually,
You're like, it's not exactly driving itself.
I do say that. Well, okay.
I am doing something in here. I am doing, something. But so I just think the big takeaways from this conversation is people with disabilities can work, can drive, can do a lot of things, but you have to keep being persistent at it. And you have to be relentless. And I see people with disabilities sometimes get discouraged, but you can't get discouraged. And we need to improve the system. And I'm sure, Megan, you and I could talk a lot about that. And you probably have horror stories about asking for an accommodation.
Oh, yeah.
It's still not exactly where it should be, but there has been a lot of progress. And we have, as people with disabilities, also have to do our part and ask for these things and keep pushing, because every time there's a person with disability in the workforce working, that's a big victory for the whole community, because it's breaking stereotypes. Megan just being there teaching is a testament to the fact that people with disabilities can work, and a great example to I guarantee you there's some people with disabilities in your class, so that they can see that people with disabilities can have jobs and work is a great thing. And I would love to have you on again, Megan, to talk about more stuff.
I'd be honored to come back.
But you were great, and keep on teaching people math, because I'll never learn it. But other people have to.
Yeah.
To make up for me. So thank you for being. Do you want to anything else you want to say as we're wrapping up?
I like to say, please don't give up on yourself. I always tell my kids, and I always tell myself that it will happen one day. You just have to keep being persistent about it.
Right. I mean, I loved that fact that, and I'll close on this. I mean, you said 70, 80 different interviews, different jobs.
Yeah.
Now you got the one. And like you said, if I had stopped at 10, it would have been, I'd still be waiting for, or if you stopped at, that school district that was not a positive experience for you, and saying, you know what, I'm not going to teach anymore. That could have been another time for you to give up. But you were like, no, I'm just fine. There are other school districts in the world. I'll find another one. So just don't get discouraged and keep going. Keep going.
Yes.
Thank you, Megan, for being with us. And
thank you for having me.
I'll see everyone next time on the next episode of the Atlantic CIL podcast. Bye.